Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and I thought this was pretty interesting. So we're seeing the sentiment kind of decidedly shift on the prism shards, which is this new mechanic in Raid Shadow Legends for kind of a different way of 10x summoning and a way to target certain champion pools and entice players to summon in a different way. But what I did here on the channel, which I love these, by the way, if you're a viewer of mine, you know I love these community polls because I like to see the trends of how the waves are shifting out there with how people are thinking in their mindset. And what we saw over a month ago, I did this poll here asking if your first impression of the new prism shard system was positive or negative. And you can see we had 35% positive back then when the prism shards were kind of first announced back then just over a month ago with the first iteration of the summoning pool. But what we see with this current one is even though the summoning pool is insane, you've got champions like Duchess and Nekmathar and Mighty Uko and Mashaled and Teodor and some really good options, we see that get cut in basically exactly half, going from 35 all the way down to 18 this time around when I hosted the poll a couple days ago asking about your overall view of the prism shards in this current context of the current event happening right now. And that's definitely interesting because it means basically no matter what champions Plarium puts in here, the player base as a whole is not going to view this favorably. You would have thought if this previous one was 35%, that this one would be like 55, 60% because the champions, which not only the legendaries, but the epics are way, way better than the champions that were in the previous pool. The previous pool one was just basically decent. It was okay. This pool right here is actually really solid in terms of legendaries and epics that are up for grabs. And then some of the sentiments that those of you out there had in the community were, so the 4x the cost of the first event, which now clearly was a bait, and no mercy system. This is an easy hard pass. Yeah, that is true. It's unfortunate that there isn't a mercy system based off of like, if you pull this many summons here or this many prism shards, you're guaranteed a legendary, like on your 4th or 5th one. At least there would be some light at the end of the tunnel. So that is a very important point, that there is no mercy system and no guarantee to get a legendary. It's just a 10% chance. So you could easily pull 15, 20 of these things and get nothing but epics. And pulling 15 or 20 of these prism shards would be insanely expensive. It would be damn near impossible to get to that many pulls. And then we've got the idea of the event was great, in my opinion. I would actually agree with that. The problem is the price of the prism. Yep, and you have to go hard in the Fire Knight to get 1/4 of a summon. You should get a minimum of 40 or 80 per event, which means instead of 1/4 of a summon, you would get one summon. So basically like 4x the opportunity to acquire these shards. And I agree with that. I actually do like where Plarium's head was at in terms of designing the prism shards. It's pretty cool to get a custom pool to do separate summoning so people can kind of pick and choose their opportunities on where they want to prioritize their resources and things they want to go after. But again, it's just the price. It's too crazy. It's way too hard with no mercy system to get any sort of reliability on doing these pulls. And then this is also a good point. Also, because after the end remaining, they are auto pulled and you can't save the resource. Yeah, if you could kind of like pool these over time and over the course of 4, 5, 6 months, hold off until you see a champion like an Acrisia in there and you're like, okay, I've been saving up to YOLO for 5 months. I'm going to go after Acrisia here in this event. If that were at least an option, I think you would see that percentage of positivity rate go way up from like 18% to like probably 30 or 40 just from that one thing. If we could kind of save to pick and choose our spots where we really want to go after it. And then I thought this one right here from Hellbent Legion was an interesting perspective. You've got, it is pretty much for spenders or enticing people to become major spenders. And I think that's ding, ding, ding. I think that's kind of what's going on here. I think they want to put that carrot out there of Duchess and champions like that, and then make these prism shards tough to acquire. But if you want to become a huge spender, this would be a really good opportunity for you to pull something like a Duchess onto your account. And I think that is kind of the target demographic of an event like this, is you take those people that are in the medium to upper tier of spending and then kind of entice them to move forward and YOLO a bit more and move into that next tier because they see an opportunity that isn't going to come along super often. Like maybe you only get Duchess in a pool like this once a year, so you have a way to entice people to move in from that like mid to upper mid tier of spending to become more towards that whale tier. And I think the odds slash champion pool are good. However, with not seeing how to obtain them other from being bombarded with purchase options, it is a bit annoying and makes it hard to gauge overall quality. Yep, that's true. It's not like you can farm these prism shards consistently. You have to kind of get them in certain specific limited ways that Plarium feeds them to you via tournaments and events. There isn't a reliable way to really go after them over the course of the few days that it's live. And this was also a good point here from Jason. I feel kind of taken advantage of because I bought one before I realized they increased the cost of summoning, and I only got one pull. So Platinum is all, or Plarium is always moving the goalpost, and that's okay. After the Forge Pass, I'm over. I'm going back to not spending because it is almost always a disappointment. That is true. That was a little bit of a misfire. They should have probably announced they should have been a little bit more forthright about the fact that it was going to go from 20 of a cost to summon to 80 cost to summon like it did in this event. So people definitely got hoodwinked a little bit and thrown for a loop because the odds got adjusted and people got excited, but wait a minute, the price went up 4x. So that was definitely something that should have been directly clarified. So yeah, it almost kind of ends up like the target market for this event is the polar edges of the player base. It's either like the new players that are free to play and they don't have any of these epics that they need on their account, and it would be a really, really good event for them because you're guaranteed an epic every pull. So if you get to a point where you get 1 or 2 pulls and you can get a Stag Knight or a Deacon or an Ugo or one of these epics that can really help out your account, that would be amazing for them, even if they just got 1 or 2 pulls. And then on the flip side, for the uber whale high spenders, it's going to be a great opportunity to add a champion like Duchess to your account. So I think it kind of hits the polar edges. And then everybody in the middle who's kind of like early game, mid game, kind of just getting into the end game, maybe they're like a light spender, for that like vast majority of like 75 to 80% of the player base, it's really not going to make a whole lot of sense as an event. And that's probably why we see the percentages break down to about only 18% of the player base viewing it as a positive thing. So yeah, hopefully these prism shards get adjusted a little bit, and we'll have to see kind of what Plarium gets from their end, because ultimately they're going to go with the market demand and what the player base is kind of showing them in terms of participation and spending and how excited they are to go after these events. But hopefully they'll adjust it in a way over time and fine tune this to be able to make more sense for a larger percentage of the player base. And massive shout out to all of you, as always, for taking the time to vote over in the community tab. The thousands of you voting on those really helps me produce content here where we can give an overall perspective on how the community is feeling and how these events are shaking up in games, so that I can keep you in the loop in videos here on the channel. So I appreciate all of you. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you soon in the next vid. Peace.